G'day folks. Well, in this video I'm going to show you how to solve this Curvy Copter with jumbling. So what I'm going to do is scramble it up, including the jumbling, and then take it from there, return it to cube shape, and then get it back solved. Before I start scrambling, I just want to show you the jumbling move, or one of them. And jumbling, of course, I should point out, is when pieces swap their orbits. So this piece has a particular orbit that it can travel in with normal 180-degree turns. So it can go along that sort of orbit there. By jumbling, we can swap the piece from that orbit over to this orbit, and you'll see that as we do it here. Much harder to get, for me, to get these angles right on this Curvy Copter than the helicopter. I never ever know where they are. Once I get them, they'll turn. There we go. So that's what the angle is supposed to be like. It's so that this line, or this cut, lines up with there, and that cut lines up with there, so then they can turn like that. So once we've done that, we'll jumble them. You can see that yellow piece, which used to belong here, has swapped with the white piece. Those two pieces are in different orbits. Notice also that these two pieces have also swapped, but they have not swapped orbits. They are in the same orbit. And that's going to be helpful to us later on. So what I'm going to do is do some scrambles, just 180-degree turns initially. Then I'm going to build in some jumbling moves. So once I've scrambled this a decent amount, I'll be then building in some moves such as that. And then after I'm satisfied with that, I'm then going to start building in some moves where I just turn one of them and release single pieces, and before too long it'll become close to unturnable, and then we'll go about getting it solved. Well, this pretty much is in an almost unturnable state, and I want to explain that with the Curvy Copter. If I try and turn this one, you'll see that as I turn it, just watch this piece here. You can see that it just pushes that piece apart. Now that is not a legal move. I mean, you can do it, you can actually force it past, but if you do that, you will end up in a state where you've got to continually force pieces back, and that's not what we're on about here. Only legal moves, and I don't think it's such an issue with the helicopter cube, but with this one it is. You go and try and turn stuff, and almost everywhere you turn, you can see there it's pushing this one out. And so before too long you will get to a point of not really being able to do much. I can turn this one, and that's almost about it. So how do you go getting it back to cube shape? Well, you're looking for two pieces that are kind of like this, where one's pointing outwards, the other's pointing downwards or upwards. It doesn't really matter. And what we're going to be trying to do is, every time we've got two pieces like this, we'll turn the one that's pointing outwards onto this edge. We'll turn that edge at 180 degrees, and when we turn it, it puts the other piece onto the second edge, or the first edge. Then we can turn that back, and that has dealt with both those pieces. And you'll see that as soon as we were in a state there where we almost couldn't turn anything, but as soon as we got two done, that leads to another two, and I can do exactly the same thing with those two, and it's back to cube shape. Now there is one situation that I just want to quickly show you. Let's have a look at that now. Okay, and it is this situation here where we've got a couple of these pieces sort of symmetrically on an edge, and they're like that, and no amount of dealing with them apart from switching positions of one of them is going to get rid of it. So this one here, I'm just going to turn that off for the moment, put it out of the way. What I need to do is move this, instead of being on this edge, perhaps onto this edge here, onto an adjoining edge. So I'll turn it up like that, put that piece on that edge, and then turn this whole edge until it connects with this one to make this edge complete. Then I can turn that back in. Now what I've got over here, when I turn that like that, I've still got this, but you'll notice now it's in a much better position for actually dealing with the two pieces. And so you'll see now that I can grab this one, can turn it into that edge, turn that 180, and then turn that back. And that's returning it to the cube shape. Now from here we're going to start solving. We're going to do it from really working our way upwards. So if it was a helicopter, there'd be no edges, so I could just start the white face anywhere I like. But in this case there are edges, so I know that that's the white face. What I'm going to do first is place any centers into positions that I can. So if they're in an orbit where they go, I just place them with simple turns like this. What have we got here? This one can go into that orbit. we got any other whites? There's the whites on the bottom. Let's have a look and see. That one can certainly go into that orbit. And the other one, okay, now this other one, it's currently going into this orbit here, but there's already a piece in that orbit, so we've got to get it to this orbit. So I'll look and see that that orbit is right next to the white piece. Now when I need to swap a white piece, and by the way, I can only swap to there or to there. I can't swap to there in one jumbling move. I'll need to do 2 jumbling moves to get it there. So if I want to swap to that orbit, what I need to do is move both the pieces like that so that they are opposite each other. You remember at the start we did the jumbling move, and we can turn these up, do our jumbling move, turn them back, and what we'll see is that it might have messed up the pieces that were involved in here, but now all of our whites are in the correct orbits. So we can put that one back, and this one here, turn it off, put it on, and we've now got all of those white pieces correctly done. So that's a fairly straightforward step, but it does show the jumbling move that you'll need to do either from time to time or a lot, depending on how jumbled your pieces are. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to do, we might start with this one because we've actually got the white, green, orange in its position and it's with the edge correctly. Now, that's no good, unfortunately. I need to get these pieces here. So the technique for doing that is to turn it up to the top face, and because you'll notice that the orange-green is now wrongly oriented. That's how I want it when I'm placing these pieces here. So the first thing I'm looking to see, is there a green piece that will go next to this corner in that orbit? And there is. So I find it, I turn off the corner, put that green center on and turn the corner back, and that's placed that one. I do the same with this one. Travel along the orbit looking for an orange piece, but I can't see any. I do notice, however, that that is where it needs to be and there's an orange piece next to it. So technically I could turn that to these two, but it's going to mess up the white a little bit, so I'll just see if I can do it easier. Noting that it's got to be in this orbit, and that is the same as that one, and I've got an orange piece here which is the same as that one. So that means I can grab this orange piece and swap it over to this orbit, and once it's there you'll see that that'll travel to where it needs to be. So that's easy done. I don't need to worry about putting any of this stuff back at the moment because I haven't dealt with that face. I can now go and bring my orange piece up, turn the corner off, put the orange in, put the corner back, and now all of that is done. I can turn that in. You can see that because we had the edge wrongly oriented, when we turn it back it's correctly oriented. So just looking to build up to the edge position here. I could turn around here and look at the white, blue, orange, which is in position but it's not correctly oriented. So firstly let's take it out, make sure the edge is flipped, which it is, the blue matches the orange. Now the first thing is I want to get the corner pointing upwards, and to do that I'm just going to turn it around the top face. Doesn't really matter which direction. If you turn it round and it's not pointing up, just turn it round again. One less thing to remember. There we go. And it so happens that as I've done that, it's brought with it the correct pieces, so I can now turn that down. I'll take that. What's next? White, blue, red. Again, turn it there. It's not pointing upwards. Bring it round the top face. This puzzle turns so well, by the way. This is a phenomenal puzzle for $18, which is what it still is. But sometimes it wants to go and jumble. You've just got to be, like, it's so smooth that it'll just do that. Alright, the white, red, blue. Again, the edge is correctly misoriented, which is what we want. We just need to get a blue piece there. There is one in the orbit, so we turn that off, bring it round, turn it back, and put it down. I hope the next one's harder because they haven't been that hard so far. Alright, this one, we've got the white, green, red up there. You'll notice that it doesn't match that. In other words, the edge is correctly oriented here. We don't want that at the moment, so we've got to turn that off, misorient the edge, and then turn it back on and take stock. Now we'll notice that the corner matches the edge. Alright, so we're looking first for a red piece in this orbit, and I do have one there, so I'll turn that around. You know the drill by now. and we're looking for a green piece to be here. And once again, we do have it in that orbit. Don't panic if you don't feel you're getting enough jumbling moves, because there will certainly be jumbling moves near the end of the solve. Done that, we can turn it down, and that's fairly straightforward. That's completed all of the bottom half of the puzzle. Now, to do the top half, on the helicopter cube there are no edges, so we needed to check that the corners were correct. However, on this one, the first thing to do is just place the edges all pointing, with the yellow pointing upwards, because we know if we do that the corners will be in a correct 3 cycle. And just to demonstrate that, when it starts solved, all the corners are in their correct positions. If I was to turn one edge, then I'd have these 2 corners swapped, and the only way to deal with that would be to get that edge back and have the corners correct. So with all the edges right, we know that the corners are good. We can set about solving these centres here. And so the first thing I might do is put any in that I can. So look, I've got an orange in here. Can I get the other orange in? I can. It's on this orbit, so I'm going to go, and all of this just with simple turns, placing the centres in their orbits. That orange face is done. These might come out later, but that's okay. What about the blues? Well, there's no blue piece in that orbit, and the other blue piece belongs in this orbit, so they'll need to be put into the orbits. That red is in the wrong orbit. You can see there's already a red piece there. And the greens, well, I've got a green here that I could put in, but it'll mess up that orange. I've got a green here that I can put in, so what the heck, might as well put that one in just to start with. So that's where we begin from. Simple turns. Now we've got to get pieces into their correct orbits. Now note that the green piece does not need to be put into its correct orbit, it's in its correct orbit. So I can forget about that for the moment. Let's have a look at this red piece. The red piece is not in its correct orbit. This one needs to be over here in that orbit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn it around and I'll swap it with that blue piece over here. Yes, it's going to mess up these like I said. That's okay. As long as they stay in their orbits, which they will, we can deal with that at a later time. So once we've done the jumbling move, put all the edges back. You can see now that red is in the correct orbit. That red has stayed there. The orange is still in its correct orbit, and if you want, you can go ahead and put it back like that. So the red is okay. That green is okay. What about the blues? That blue is okay. We must have another blue somewhere, and we do. This other blue is sitting in that position, and it needs to be in this orbit to go into that position. So we'll swap it with this yellow piece here. Now make a bold prediction now that we should find that all of our pieces are in their correct orbits. Right, the reds are in, that blue, yes, that blue, yes, the oranges are in, and that green, yes. So all of the pieces are in their correct orbits. The thing that we need to do now is swap 2 pieces in an orbit. For example, this green piece and this yellow piece need to be swapped. I can't just cycle them home, because if I cycle that green home, I'll knock out the orange. So how do we do that? Well, you remember that the jumbling move we did at the start, it swapped 2 pieces here, and it also swapped 2 pieces in an orbit. So what we're going to do is we want to swap the green and the yellow. I'm going to put 2 pieces on the side here of the same colour to swap. Now I note that I've got a couple of blues up here. So the first thing I can do is place that blue down to there. And that's one of the pieces I want to swap. So I haven't affected that by placing the blue, but if I just place that blue there, it would affect that green piece. So instead of just turning it there, I need to cycle it there with this yellow piece as well. Alright, so now I've got those 2 blues on the side. I'm going to do the jumbling move. I'm going to swap the blues, and as I swap those blues, the green and the yellow that were there have now swapped positions, and we'll see that when we turn the edge back, they're now in the correct position. So I can then put back these pieces that I had, 3 cycle that one back, single turn that one back. The greens are done, those oranges are still done. The reds are still done, and now I've just got to accomplish the same thing with these two blues. So if I do those two blues first, again, we'll whack a yellow here this time, and we'll whack this yellow over here by 3 cycling it through. And now I can do that jumbling move. Turn the edge back, cycle back these 3 pieces. Turn that one back, and you'll see that that blue is in. Now, this blue, if I was to do the same 2 pieces here, you can tell that all it would do would be to swap those 2 back. And so instead of doing that, I need to do the opposite jumbling move. So instead of turning this one down and this one up, I'm going to turn this one down and this one up, and then it will swap these 2 pieces. So once again, I'm going to turn a yellow down to there. I'm going to cycle this yellow down to there. As setups, now I've got 2 yellows there that I can swap. So I'll turn this one down, I'll turn this one up. See if I've got them remotely in the correct position. Not quite. Maybe that's better. There we go. Jumble, put back pieces, put back edges, and you'll notice that as we do that, let's put back that yellow edge there. We'll cycle back these pieces, and we'll see that all of our centers now are solved. They're in position. It doesn't get harder than that. So the hardest thing you'll encounter is having to swap 2 pieces in an orbit, and I hope that I've made that fairly clear. So the only thing left to do now is to place the corners. Let's have a look. We'll notice that the corners here are in a 2+2 swap, which is essentially the same as a 3 cycle. The yellow, green, red has got to go here. The yellow, green, orange has got to go here. So those 2 need to swap. Those 2 need to swap. So the first thing that we're going to do is to place the corners. Now, I can do 2 edge piece series involving these 2, and the thing to note in this little routine is that if I start with turning this one, that piece is not going to be affected. The next 3 will, and the next 3 will cycle around that way. So let me show you what we're doing. 2 of them. Then having done that, we grab the other edge that we haven't turned yet and bring that in, and then we undo these 2. And then having done that, we'll turn that edge back. Now let's see what was happened. You remember that what did happen? Remember that we had a 2+2 swap. If we look here now, we've actually placed the yellow, orange, blue. We've oriented it as well, which is okay, but we've placed it into that position. The other 3 will now be in a 3 cycle. You can see the yellow, green, red's got to go there, the green, orange to there, and this to here. So we know that if we involve this piece to start with, so those 2 there, then the piece movement will be like that, which is what we want. And so I'll turn this edge, then that edge, and do that again. And then bring in the 3rd edge. Undo those turns. Undo the 3rd edge turn, and you can see that all of the edges, all of the corners I should say, are now exactly in position. Some are oriented, some are not. So placing your corners is as simple as that. The last step is to orient corners. Now, again, in terms of orienting, what we're going to do is turn edges around the cube. So we're basically going to do a front, right, back, left 6 times. If it was a helicopter cube, we would only need to do it 3 times, but because it's got the edges, we'll need to do it 6 times. Now, if I turn it front, if I have the piece that I don't want to change in the left position and I go around this way, the other 3 corners will orient anti-clockwise. They'll twist anti-clockwise. If I have the piece that I don't want to change in that position and I went that direction, so I went front, left, back, right, the other 3 pieces would rotate clockwise. Now I've only got 2 pieces here that I need to twist, so I've got to think carefully about what bits I want where in order to set them up to ensure that I then have 3 pieces that need to rotate in the same direction. So let's just try. What if I had one here and I went to rotate all of these three pieces anti-clockwise? What would happen? That would solve, and that would still be solved. So that's no good. Let's turn it round. What if I had this one that didn't move and I went to rotate all three pieces anti-clockwise? That would go to there, that would go to there, that would go to there. I'd have four pieces that needed rotating. No good. What about this one kept as it is? These other three would rotate anti-clockwise. What would happen? That would rotate to there, that would rotate to there, that would rotate to there and solve. So if I had this in this position, this would remain needing to be rotated clockwise. This would end up needing to be rotated clockwise. This would end up needing to be rotated clockwise, and this would solve. And that would accomplish exactly what I want. Three pieces that need to rotate in the same direction. So that enables me to go, okay, this is where I need to have the piece that doesn't move, and I need them to go in that direction. So we go front, right, back, left 6 times. How many is that? I think it's 3, but you don't need to count because you will see when it's done, because everything will come back together. Okay, and you can see all the edges are back and all the centers are back, and look what's happened. We've got 1, 2, 3, all of which need to be rotated clockwise, and this one is solved in position. So you remember that at the start I said, at the start of this section, I said that if you had a piece that you don't want to move here and you go this direction for the edges, then you'll have these 3 pieces rotating clockwise. And so now that's the position we want to be in, and away we go. I think we're coming back to the end now. You can see that as we do that, all of those corners have oriented. I hope that's made it fairly simple. That is the Curvy Copter with jumbling solved.